Okay, in the interest of punctuality, I'm going to get started on the presentation that we're doing together right now, the 2023 presentation for building the college essay. And as I like to say, spring break is the best time to start considering an essay that's not going to be submitted in many cases until January 1st of 2024. So it's an early start, but that's good. And I'm going to give a little bit of a preamble and run my head a little bit as I'm prone to do, just in order for people to kind of to meander in. But again, let me know if you can't hear anything, or if you can't see something, or if things aren't being shared. I will refer to some documents throughout this presentation. Riley sent one of them out, the collection of the Good Common Application essays. So you should have received that. If not, then I'll send it to you. With anything on this presentation, I'm recording it. So if you miss anything, um, then obviously let me know, and we'll send you the recording that you can sift through all 90 minutes and look for the little nugget that you wanted to when you get a hold of it. But it takes a day or so to digest and to save, maybe less than that, a half hour or so. And then I'll send you the recording on this. But yeah, please let me know any questions throughout the process. There is a function on Zoom, obviously, raising hands. Don't worry about that. If you want us to give you a question, because I'm not going to. It can throw everything off when you stop things in the middle of the presentation. But if you put it in the chat, once there's a natural pause, I'll be sure to address the question. So chat me the question. You can chat it to me or chat it to the group. But in all cases, it's let me know throughout, and don't worry about raising the hand. Just put it in the chat, and I'll get to it. With so enough kind of preamble, enough preliminary housekeeping. Let's get to the nitty gritty. Let's get to the point, as the UC essay we're going to see is preferred. Is the preferred format for it. What a terrible way of phrasing that. In any case, to begin, building the college essay. Now I've been doing this. I've been doing a presentation on the college essay in some form since Bill Clinton was president, and I really enjoy it. The essay is one of the few things that the student has that really is in their control, and that they feel is in their control, and that they can move the needle with college applications. College apps is starting from like ninth grade or even before that. It's a little bit of a marathon rather than a sprint. So with if you can do anything to have some impact on the decision, then you want to try and especially one that'll be kind of a limited time commitment type thing, then you want to take advantage of it, and that is the essay. So it's something that students get concerned with, they get worried about, they get really wrapped up in, and it's something that all of us on our end, everybody that works together with Lemaire College Consulting, for the most part, has a writing background. So it's something that we all really enjoy doing, going through and crafting. And it's a great way to get to know the students, even though that's not the purpose. But it's a great way to get to know everybody. So our agenda today is to start off with frequently asked questions. So we're going to jump right in and go through some of the things that are almost certainly on your mind, myths that we'll dispel, and ways that we will, and other things that are probably at the forefront of your head regarding college essays. We will move then into the common application essay. The common application, if you don't know, is the application by which you're going to apply to about 90% of the schools that you apply to. The Common App essay is what most people know as the personal statement, the college essay. So that's the one we start with. The second group of essays that we go into are the supplements. On the Common Application, there's that main personal statement. Like I said, it's known as the personal essay. Just about every school will have some kind of a supplemental essay that students need to complete in addition to the main Common App essay. Why do you want to come here? Why should we let you? And so forth. The next one down, the University of California, a totally separate application, nothing in common with the Common App, its own app, but most folks here are California residents. You're not California residents, you're usually engineering folks, so UC is often at the top of everyone's list. After that, we'll go through our process, how we deal with this, and address student questions, address the essays, meet to go over things, develop kind of the creativity behind things, and yet again, more housekeeping, which everybody loves. So to start things off, Are you giving me the business? You gotta, here, I have to click in there. Here we go. All right, so is that the first? Okay, here's the first fact. So first frequently asked question, how many essays will I write? The answer is about 20 to 25 separate essays on average. As I often say, the essay is the heavy lifting. The essays are the heavy lifting that the student will do over the fall. The letter of recommendation requests, Google Forms, the activities, the applications themselves, sending in test scores, all important and all necessary little things to get in for the app themselves, but where you spend the majority of your time is going to be in the writing and the rewriting and the editing. Overall, as I say, 20 to 25 essays. Those include 4 University of California essays. UC essays are 350 words apiece. The Common Application main statement, the Common App essay, the Common App personal statement, that's 650 words. The Common Application supplements, which in some cases aren't there. In the case of Northeastern, in the case of Case Western Reserve, in the case of Ohio State, Middlebury, a number of other schools, especially schools outside of the top 100, no supplemental essay. But in most cases for the schools that you're going to apply to, that we apply to, there are questions that are everything, as I said, from why do you want to come here? Why should we let you? To if you could be a superhero, what would you be? Common App supplements are about 5 essays per school, 1 to 5 essays per school, depending. Some are more than that. You wind up doing something with like a film studies program at NYU or Chapman, and then it's just a mess of essays. You wind up doing something with Stanford. You got 3 longer ones and a bunch of little quick takes. We'll go into this a little bit. Additionally, you'll have non-Common App school essays that were essays that are not under UC and for which the schools are not on Common App. That includes MIT, Georgetown. You could include Rutgers in there, a handful of other schools that have their own application platform. And in the case of Rutgers, there's really nothing different between that and the Common App essay. In the case of MIT, it's totally different. In the case of Georgetown, it's quite different. Ooh, excellent question. Thank you so much. How about other public universities, such as Texas and Michigan? Do they use Common App? Yes, they do. And all of them have pretty much migrated over the past 10 years or so. The more popular ones do. The University of Washington does, the University of Michigan does, the University of Texas does, Virginia Tech, Virginia, North Carolina. As I said, Rutgers has its own platform. Penn State has its own platform, but it's also on Common App, which is the same with Arizona State. The benefit of using their own platform, though, is with Arizona State and Penn State, you don't have to submit transcripts. You just have to type in the grade. With Common App, you have to wait until the transcripts come through. So if you wanted to get things in super early, it's hard to do it while going through Common App with those schools. It's better just to go through the school's own individual platform. But a topic for a different day. Most public schools are going to be on the Common App, with the exception of UC, including UMich, Texas, UW, and UIUC, Purdue, UMass, and the lion's share of other publics that students apply to. But yes, excellent question. All right, I answered that live. All right, I already did that. Okay, great. Do I have to do anything else? Okay, well, I don't know exactly what that sign means, but that's fine. Moving right along. Next frequently asked question. How much do the essays matter? They can matter quite a bit, depending on the school. There are some schools and some students for whom they don't matter. To take for the student to address students where they wouldn't matter, consider a student that has perfect grades, an incredible level of rigor, a 1600 on the SAT, and is applying to the University of San Francisco. More likely than not, the essay is going to be read as it needs to be in there to have a complete application, but substantively, it's not going to make too much of a difference. For a student with a 3.0 and a 1290 who's applying to the University of San Francisco, that essay is going to matter quite a bit more. For students on the bubble, the essays make a difference. For students that are straight admits, the essay doesn't make a difference. For students that are straight denials, the essay typically won't make a difference. Everybody in the top 20, every college in the top 20, nobody's a straight admit. So the essays, to the extent that the student is making it through the read with any great degree of success, the essays will matter. They tend to matter a little bit more for small schools than for the larger schools. For UC, they will matter. Every year there's rumors that more people will come through with rumors that'll say, I heard the UC essays don't matter, and they that's totally incorrect. They matter quite a bit. They matter very differently than the Common App essay, which we'll go into, but they're still very important for admissibility to the school. But long story short, essays can matter, especially for students on the bubble. Okay, everyone's questions. But if my grades are bad, can I still get into Stanford with a great essay? No. Can a bad college essay negatively affect my application? Yes, even a mediocre college essay can negatively affect your application. There's we listened to a podcast the other day from Yale AOs. It was very interesting the way that they addressed like average essays. Like, yeah, sometimes we'll let them in, but not typically. It's interesting the way that they still want to be impressed by things. As I said, every college in the top 20 for every student that applies, that college is a reach. Everybody's on the bubble, best case scenario. So the essays will matter for those schools. What is more important, the content of the essay or the writing skill in the essay? That varies from application to application. In the case of UC, the writing skills matter that much. In the case of private schools, both are important. The content matters. We want a good, compelling topic in the Common App essay, and the writing style matters. The delivery matters. The reflection matters. Our goal is a good story, well told, good content, and good connections. Let's begin with some of the specifics of this, though, to the extent that it pertains to Common App. Again, Common App, the main 650-word personal statement, the main college essay as most people see it, or as most people speak about it. This dense wall of text are the 7 Common App prompts. This is like the last time you'll see them until you actually go on to Common App, because we use them almost not at all. Why? Because they're incredibly general prompts that are useful for students that are really trying to get an idea about what to write about. But ultimately, it's nothing more than that. When I was in admissions, I wouldn't pay attention to the prompt. Most people don't pay attention to the prompt. Every variation of the prompt is going to be something like, tell me about yourself, or something that you've experienced that's reflected a degree of personal change, which, as we'll see, is kind of like the standard way that you address Common App to begin with. But these 7 prompts, just to review them a little bit quickly. Please share your story, your background, basically anything. How did you experience an obstacle? Most students will write about something like this, where there'll be an obstacle of some sort in the essay. Talk about when you challenge or question a belief or idea. That could be very cool. Not everybody has that experience, though. Talk about gratitude. That's a new prompt for 2021. So that's relatively new. An accomplishment that sparked a period of personal growth. So again, almost like personal story that shows growth. Describe something that really captivates you, which you find so engaging that it makes you lose track of all track of time. That can work. It depends on how it's being done. And finally, topic of your choice. So you get to see very general stuff. As I say in the Common Application essay meetings, it's these prompts are essentially tell me about yourself, which is essentially the universe. Any thoughts? Which can make Common App very hard to get any footing on, any purchase on. But let's talk about the Common App and kind of illustrate and clarify what makes a good Common App essay, and what we're striving for with the end in mind. What do colleges want from this thing? What is about this that they're trying to get? I think that, and this is a quote that I got from the podcast that I recently saw that I brought up, from a Yale admission officer. I think that encapsulates it. Essays aren't a way for us to gauge your writing talent, but a way to meet the student. I want to get a sense of what it would be like to have a conversation with you. Don't over edit it. That last part is something that that should be like that should be the company motto. Don't over edit it. We want to preserve the voice. We want to preserve some authenticity. We want to preserve the personality. When you do overwork things and rework things and tinker with every last little word in order to give it as much gravitas as you possibly can, it doesn't work. It doesn't have the natural flow. That's all a judgment call, and we rein you in with those things. But ultimately, it should sound authentic. It should sound heartfelt. And one thing to keep in mind, too, is that in the Common App essay, we want to showcase the personality. We want to not necessarily showcase accomplishments. Accomplishments are good to have, and they're great. I mean, if you've got a patent, it should be, kind of a centerpiece of the Common App essay. We should talk about that. nevertheless, if you have had no personal growth through the pursuit of that patent, it might not be the best choice. So again, if we can have a good activity in there that kind of serves as a main topic, great, but ultimately we need the storyline, and we'll get to what the storyline entails. What do colleges want to learn? Continued from the previous slide. How do students think through situations, and what is their process? All of the sample essays, and let me just go to this. This is always risky going back and forth between Zoom and other stuff, but all of the Common App essays that we have here in the 2023 illustrations, they all do that well. They're all going to give an idea, a really good idea of the student's process, how they think, how they interact with the world, how they emotionally disentangle problems, how they logistically disentangle problems. And the reason that all of our essays do this well is because that's how we set them up. All of the essays are intended to be a storyline. As I've mentioned to several of you who have already done the Common Application meeting, as open-ended as Common App is, there are three essential components of Common App that I believe that you need. Number one, the essay has to showcase a positive trait or positive traits about you. Number two, it should do it in a storyline, because a storyline allows the reader to see the process. It allows the reader to see intellectual engagement. It allows the reader to see how a student encounters an obstacle, how they get through obstacles, and what they might learn from obstacles. Not necessarily real dramatic kind of existential obstacles, but even something that adds or elicits a change of perspective. That's enough. But we want to see that storyline where the student is here, then they encounter a situation, they change a little bit, and then the student is here. That's a storyline. That allows the reader to see process. Also, it's much more compelling than the alternative. The alternative to a storyline is typically a montage, a snapshot or a quilt work of different illustrations of a particular trait. That doesn't flow. When you're reading 1,000 essays a season, you kind of want to get a little bit enchanted. That's not necessarily what we're going for beyond all else. This isn't to have like a New York Times bestseller, but we do want to make it interesting for the reader. We do want the essay to have that sticky factor where it sticks with the reader a couple of days after having gone through it, where it can complement the rest of the application well, where it showcases something about the process. And that's what a storyline gets you versus a montage. Something else to consider with, and this is usually a collateral benefit of, or a collateral impact for the essays that we put together, that we work with the students to put together, is that the students typically look like they're going to be a very good fit for the community. And more than one university will ask their readers, would I want to do a group project with this person? Would I want this person to be my roommate? Would I want to do a lab with this person? The fit that the student has and how they'd be able to work well with others is something that's significant. And all of the sample essays that we have, from tomatoes to soccer to chess, all of them do to the writing story with the three little bears on the desk. All of those do it very, very well. Okay. Some fundamental attributes of the essay. I say this in various different forms. As I said before, we'd like a good story well told. We'd like good content and good connections. We also want positive traits showcased in a storyline, typically that's taken place during high school. So all of these are saying sort of similar things from different standpoints, but I think that presenting the attributes of the essay from different perspectives allows you to get your mind around it a little bit better. So let's go through a couple of different things that we'd like to have in the essay. We would like, as I said, to have some good content. We would want to have something that showcases the student's personal journey, something that will be interesting and compelling. As I said before, it doesn't necessarily have to be an existential lesson. It doesn't necessarily have to be showcasing something like a patent or even any activity. But we want something where we're going to have that storyline that showcases the student as a person, and that's where the good content comes from. As I said before, a lot of universities or several universities will read the essay with the question in mind: how would this student make a good contribution to the university? And a lot of this is through the qualities that are showcased in the essay. And as I said, for my three essential qualities of the Common App essay, positive traits showcased in a storyline during high school, positive traits all work. All of these work. If we are showcasing curiosity, passion, persistence, creativity, empathy, connection to culture, communication abilities, an understanding of others, a deeper understanding of self, entrepreneurial abilities, all of those work with, obviously there's some, I would say that generally speaking, really, really strong, powerful leadership is going to be a little bit more compelling than creativity, writing poetry, short stories for one's own personal pleasure. But still, it's I would say that as long as the storyline is there with the poetry, the creative writing type essay, that could still work also. So ultimately, some traits it's worthwhile to showcase them if we have them, namely leadership, overcoming, and so forth. But as long as the essay showcases a positive trait or traits, we're going in the right direction. That will complement the rest of the application, that are salient traits as we've gathered from the students' pre-writing. And again, a different way of saying showcased in a storyline. We'd like plot development. We'd like a plot mountain, an Aristotelian triangle, depending on what school of creative writing nerd you're coming from. But we want intro, exposition, rising action, climax, reflection, resolution. The hero's journey isn't an easy one. This is what I learned through this, where we have the obstacle introduced soon. Students eventually overcome the obstacle, and the process is showcased through this. And by obstacle, I mean that in a very, 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 very broad sense. An obstacle could mean like a group of three frenemies that make fun of a student's accent. That's enough of an obstacle where that could produce some really rich, compelling content. And along the lines of plot development, we want a personal transformation and some meditation on how the student has changed, some reflection on that change. And we have parts of the essay that we reserve for that. This transformation is going to show process. It's going to show that the student has matured. It's going to show how their identity or worldview has been developed, but we need that change. A story where, where the protagonist hasn't changed is not a story. It's a montage. It's a day in the life, a slice in the life, an activity essay. It's not something, it can work, but it doesn't work as well. It doesn't pop as well as the storylines. And again, a good story well told. So repeat the same thing over and over again. But again, it's the more you reinforce it, the more it can make sense, because it is hard to get your mind around the Common App and how it works. And again, to come back to content, we don't necessarily need the most impressive content out there. If we have something that's impressive, then we would like to have the student speak about it. For instance, if the student is grappling with a health issue that has afflicted them since freshman year, and it's like one step forward, two steps back, but they're showing the same grit and persistence and being successful in various areas of their life in spite of that, fabulous, wonderful, love it. Similarly, if a student is speaking about their own writing process, which really one of the sample essays did, and that was a student that was a Princeton admit this past year. As long as it's showcased well, the connections are made well, the content is less important than the connections, the reflection, presuming they're compelling. But the less significant the content is, the more significant and sophisticated the connections need to be. If you got really strong content, real good content, for instance, like the student that's been grappling with a health issue since 9th grade and she's just gutted it out for the last 3 years, you don't need as many nuanced connections. That's like, that's just like a really good fillet. You don't have to mess around with it. Just oil, salt, and pepper. You get some like tough flank steak, you got to marinate it and stuff like that. But the good meat, the good cuts, you don't need to mess around with. The same thing. Good content, you deliver it straight. A little bit weaker, a little wobbly, we need to get a little bit creative. We need some cool metaphors. We need dialogue. We need hooks. All right, connections, again, the connections, that's the overcoming, that's the reflection. Those are the way that the student showcases how a particular experience has influenced them. So again, we want the content, we want the topic, we want the good storyline, we want a good narrative spine, so to speak, but we want something sophisticated and intellectual that we've done with that, presuming that the content isn't completely clear about that. Transformative event stories are always good, and that's what we look for a lot in the pre-writing. The pre-writing, as I've mentioned, several times, just to catch you up to speed, if you don't remember exactly what this is, it's something that that Riley sent out that had a March 20 deadline that not everybody's gotten in, but it's these questions along, and we take this along with all of the students' summer program writing. We'll have, in some cases, 20 to 30 pages of text for the students between their academic interests and their personal experiences, and that allows us to really, build some nice work. So the transformative experiences, the transformative event essays, we'll always get from the pre-writing. It's we ask enough questions through that where if a student doesn't bring it up in like the 20, 30 pages of pre-writing we got, it doesn't, it's not something that's really, transformative. But these experiences are always good. And the chess essay, I think, is like that. It's not like the writer, the fellow that wrote it. It's not like he was like, rescuing prisoners of war behind enemy lines, where it was like that kind of like transformative. Well, that wouldn't be. Well, you get where I'm going for. It's not exactly like the most dynamic content, but it is transformative. Addressing chess, something that he's done for his entire life in a very new way, understanding more about himself by looking at chess through the eyes of children, through fresh eyes. Wonderful, neat, super, super cool. The chess essay was a University of Chicago admin. Okay, good and compelling essays. Again, another little platitude, but it'll help keep everything kind of straight. Positive content, good salient traits, solid storyline, sophisticated connections. Again, good content, good connections, good story, well told, however you want to put it. Boring and forgettable essays, the opposite. Nothing unique about the content, and the reflections, marginal. We don't produce those. I mean, about 4 years ago, we had one essay that was really that it was the best that could have been done during the content, but it was lurking on that. But in all cases, we're shooting for the first one, the good and compelling essays. Sometimes life experiences, writing ability, creativity, reflection, and procrastination intervene though. Something just to keep in mind about all of this, after all this, you're already stressed about the Common App essay. This is something that every year the USA Today comes out with the best essay, and people still talk about, oh my God, I remember the Costco essay. I read that, and that was like such a great essay from 2019 or something like that. So people get caught up in the Common App essay a lot. And we do too. It's not like we're immune. We have a whole essay, we have a whole meeting about it, we map things out, we make the students do 30 pages of pre-writing, mostly for the sake of the Common App essay. So it's like partially our fault that people are getting freaked out about it. But keep in mind that the Common App essay does not do the heavy lifting on 90% of the applications that you'll do. In the case of Northeastern, Case Western Reserve, Middlebury, Ohio State, and other schools, Arizona State, there's no supplements. So the Common App essay really will do the heavy lifting. But in all the other schools, you're applying to Brown's PLME program in liberal medical education. You've got 8 essays of 400 words a piece that you're writing. So it's, Common App's going to be part of it, but it is the bigger piece in a mosaic. If that metaphor makes sense. So Common App typically doesn't do all the heavy lifting. Common App is intended to complement the remainder of the application. It should focus on 1 or 2 salient traits of the student, where we go narrow and deep and explore those traits, and the other parts of the application are intended to come in and fill the gaps. You can't be everything to everyone in 650 words. You will get 1 read, 2 reads of the application that'll total about 10 minutes. Common App's got to come strong. It's got to come good. It's got to be a good, quick, easily digestible, compelling story. So it does need to do some of the work, but not all of the work. Okay, just to consider some of the Common App essays, and I'm not going to go through a detailed analysis of all of these, but again, I think that they're excellent. With just to kind of go through a lot of anonymous capybaras in there right now. We've got soccer, which is great. Love the opening. I mean, just great. I look around, no one cheers or acknowledges it. We've got, team sport being just totally stonewalled by your team. Then the student goes through what she had to go through in order to become part of the boys' team as the only girl. Then she goes through developing a girls' soccer team at her school. It's like a tour de force. It's like an epic trilogy of an essay, so many different stages. Wonderful, terrific, fabulous, very, very good student, currently at Tufts. Great reflection. This next one I love. It's not ours. It's from like 8 years ago. It's from a Johns Hopkins essay that worked or a Kenyon College essay that worked. And I've changed some of the specifics in there. I don't know why. I changed them a couple of years ago. But in any case, very, very good. Shows persistence, shows doesn't necessarily show the transformation, but the transformation I think is implied. It's about a student and his brother that are developing some heirloom tomatoes they ultimately sell to some local restaurants in the Bay Area. Good story, compelling, shows a lot about the student's persistence, shows a lot about the student's grit. And there is an overcoming. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's a much of a transformation in there, but it's still good and the essay still works. Chess essay, this is where they have the transformation. Great hook. Former world chess champion Garry Kasparov once commented, chess is mental torture. I was living that torture out daily through my studies. Wonderful. And great transformation through that essay. Really, really neat. And this time came a long way. This was like an 8 drafter from what I remember. We took a while to get to that. Riley was the essay consultant with this one. He did real good. Okay, this other one was Riley's also. Riley's going to be coveted after this. So this one was Chicago. This one was Princeton. And this one came a long way too. But really nice, wonderful, lovely imagery. This actually is to kind of to contradict one of the very things that I said at the beginning of this. If you've got a patent, it really should make an appearance in the Common App essay. This student did have a patent, and it did make an appearance in the Common App essay. But the thing was, she was such a heavy STEM kid. So obvious. I mean, like patent, Olympiads, state science fair, publications, high-level stuff that, in order just to not be a one-trick pony, we had to have something other than the STEM stuff in at least one part of the application. And we chose to do it in Common App. And obviously, worked out well. Princeton, MIT. So yeah, really good. But this wasn't for MIT, obviously. MIT they don't use Common App. It was a shorter. We condensed this down to, I think, 350. But yeah, all good and all. I mean, with the exception of the family heirlooms, the heirloom tomato ones, all go through a real nice personal transformation. And even the family heirlooms one, I don't think that anything is lost as a result of it not going through a massive transformation. It's still compelling. It's still sticky. You still get a real good sense of the student. With Common App, as I often say, there are a million ways to skin a cat. With UC, as we'll see, there's one right way to do it and everything else is wrong. But Common App, something I often bring up when I have the Common App meetings with students, is that, about 5 years ago, we had a student that wrote an essay about using a metaphor of a potato to talk about herself in the Common App essay. It was very creative, but it was kind of nuts. And she was admitted to Caltech. So, if the potato essay and the metaphor of a potato works for Common App and works for Caltech, then, most things are options. UC, conversely, very, very different. And we'll go through that just a bit. So let me get back to this stuff. And again, if you don't have access to any of the essays, let me know and I'll share this with you. I wonder if this is something. Oh, good question. I heard soccer sports are so commonly written about, they're no longer unique. I totally agree with that. 100%. It's hard to make the sports stories unique unless you're like the only female on an all males team or the only male on an all female team. Or in the case of an essay we had a couple of years ago, this boy that was, he refereed youth soccer events, but he was like 4'10". And he was smaller than most of the players and getting a lot of like he doing a lot of things with the kind of personal overcoming and standing his ground. But yeah, last second shot, overcoming overcoming a lot of communication issues by way of sports. Unless it's a really interesting sport, a really different sport, a really different approach, or the sport is like backstory or backdrop and the drama is taking place clearly in front of it. Totally agree. Yeah. Sports stuff, it's like, I mean, it's like that. It's like you hear about it. Like I heard about it like when, and I'm old, and I heard about it as a cliche when I was applying. Don't write about the trip to Europe. Don't write about the transformative international vacation. Don't write about the transformative service. Don't write about the last second shot or the game-winning field goal. So yeah, that's those along with some other experiences are often third rails. Their grandparents passing, often something that's very common for students at this age. So it's hard to have a different take on it. Other things that are tough are events that are going on for everybody, like the pandemic. I was in admission, this is going to date me, I was in admissions during September 11th. And that year, a lot of students wrote about September 11th. And there was one essay from there that was at all memorable. And it's an essay I still remember. And it was about a student from Regis Jesuit High School in Denver, Colorado, a Jesuit high school. He was a Muslim kid, and he wrote about his Muslim identity in the wake of September 11th at a Catholic high school. That's the only one I remember. So doing something about the pandemic, that's going to be another one that's kind of on the third rail too. No sports, grandparents passing, probably not pandemic. I mean, if you've got like nothing else, then what are you going to do? But yeah, if you could avoid them, right there with you. Excellent question. See how great I am with fielding questions too? You should feel free to ask them. I'm not going to call you down. All right, supplements. Why would I call you down? Everybody in this group is so smart. With the Common App essay, we've got the centerpiece of the application. With the supplements, again, with the exception of like Ohio State and Middlebury and Case Western Reserve and Northeastern, and Pitt and a bunch of others, usually publics, the schools are going to have some sort of supplements, and they will range. There will be those that are like super zany. What is square one? And can you actually go back to it? University of Chicago torturing everybody every year. Find X. Where's Waldo really? Compare apples and oranges. University of Chicago has a particle accelerator below campus. Put 3 things from your life in the particle accelerator, smash them together and see what comes out. I mean, just nutty stuff. And then Wake Forest with no context at all. Give us your top 10 list. And you're not even supposed to say what it's about. You just give top 10 of everything and leave it up to the reader. Less insane, but still creative. Tell us about a small goal you hope to achieve in the next 10 days, 10 months, or 10 years. And Scripps, this is the only school I've ever found that's asked this essay, and I love it. I wish more would. You have the funding for your own startup or organization. What will you launch and why? Really cool. And then we have more conventional. And this is where the majority of them fall, thankfully, for everyone. Talk about why you're interested in the field of study you're interested in. Talk about why you're interested in this school. Talk about why you're interested in studying the field of study at this school. Everybody, for the most part, is going to have something like that. They'll often have something in addition to that, too. Cornell for engineering, I think they also have a couple of words that you have to write about what you think about Cornell engineering. Northwestern, that's the only one they got. Georgia Tech, they've got a couple of other ones with that. Michigan's got a 550, why Michigan, but then it's got like a 350 activities essay. So usually there's at least the why us essay, but on top of that, there's usually most significant activity, community you feel a part of, things like that. And with all of these, we outline all of them. With all of the supplements, it's all, obviously student specific, where we're looking for things at like Michigan and Wisconsin that you'd be able to take advantage of and talk about. And if you've done research with a faculty member at a particular school, we obviously showcase that. But everything is outlined. With the Common App, it's really a laborious process because you have to have so much creativity. With the supplements, you don't really need as much creativity. With the more conventional, straightforward one, it's really about finding the overlap between the school and the student. What does the school offer that the student's taking advantage of? And you want like there's a real boilerplate way of just kind of setting the essay up. Open with an experience that relates to the school or the major that the student has had. Drop back, put that experience in context, and that paragraph with something like, and this is why I want to go to Georgia Tech, and then do the dance back and forth between what Georgia Tech offers and how you take advantage of it. Conclusion by looping back to the intro paragraph and echoing the metaphor that you started off with, or by confidently looking to the future with the Georgia Tech education under your belt. So there you go with those. We get more creative than that, but that it's like the ultimate default. If you're like, I do not want to write, I hate writing, I've got no time, and I don't want to deal with this, there you go. For creative prompts, we need more creativity. You got to match the creativity with what the student is. We need to match the creativity for the prompt with the creativity of the response. It's not like Chicago is asking for, a creative prompt just to get a standard 5-paragraph essay back. They want something weird. So with something like Chicago in particular, we treat that differently than the other essays, where we'll give the prompts, we'll give the student jumping off points for like 4 or 5 of the weird Chicago prompts. We'll also give essays from the past that have worked for Chicago prompts. And then the first draft the student has, will usually be like draft 0.5, really, where they're like talking about fleshing out the content rather than putting together, talking about the content and generally what direction they want to take the essay rather than having a real full coherent draft all put together. So Chicago and the real creative essays, we try to meet the level of creativity of the prompt with the level of creativity present in the response. Talking about creativity, we're not talking about it anymore. There's no creativity. Common App, we want to be creative. You can be a potato and still get into Caltech. Supplements, still want to be creative. People are asking you where Waldo is. Really, you can't treat that as like an academic essay. But with UC you can. There's as I said, there's a million ways to skin a cat with Common App. With UC, there's one right way to do it, and everything else is wrong. And to give you some illustrations why, and maybe some context why, this is why. The UC has 13 criteria that they look for, that they can look for. That's dictated by the Board of Governors, and dictated by the UC Office of the President. With these 13 criteria, as you see, most of the stuff on the left-hand side of the page, 1 through 6, is stuff that can't be qualified. It's stuff that you wouldn't be able to, or you can. I mean, quality senior year program of study, but you can also quantify that for UC. Long story short, stuff on the left you don't put into the essay. Stuff on the right is the stuff that for UC can make an appearance in the essay, and this is what they're going to look for. Outstanding performance in academic subject areas. How good are you at what you say you want to study? Achievements in special projects, same thing. Improvement in academic performance. If we've got some context, then that helps. Special talents, achievements, and awards. Again, performance deliverables. Participation in educational prep programs. Cosmos, Gear Up, Puente, Mesa, RSI, EPGY, they don't have that anymore, ATDP, all of that works. Academic accomplishments in light of life experiences, meaning like I go to Brawley High School in Calexico and they don't offer any AP classes, so I had to go to San Diego State Imperial Valley campus to take these classes. Geographic location, that's actually similar. It doesn't impact any of us, but kids in like Calexico, the Imperial Valley, Humboldt, Reading, those kids are from our limited service areas, so they'll typically get a bit of an edge in the UC review process. But right-hand side of the slide here, 7 through 13, this is what we can talk about in the UC essays, and this is what you should talk about in the UC essays. You don't need a lot of creativity. You don't need creative writing. You can't have dialogue. It's like, where is the chase and how do we cut to it? UC, as I said, will ask you to reply to 4 prompts of 350 words apiece, selected from 8 prompts. We select the prompts for you, and we select the content that goes in, because that's the right way to do it. If you don't want to do that, that's fine, but I'll give you a little bit like, warning, you can opt out of this, but it's not going to work for UC. Little pop-up thing on your essays. But in any case, these are the prompts for UC, these 8. Number one relates to leadership, and the boldface is just my writing in there. UC doesn't include it like that. So number one, leadership. Talk about an example of your leadership experiences. Number two, creativity. Talk about how you're creative and how you've expressed it. Number three, talent. What are you really good at? Number four, educational prep programs, educational opportunity. What have you done? For the first part, just to go over these guys, if you've got leadership, we use it. Leadership is always coveted for UC. Students can ride significant leadership positions into UC. It's always at the top of the list. So leadership, massive for UC. Creativity, not massive for UC unless you've got deliverables, unless you've won awards, unless you're like a Van Cliburn award winner or like, you know, a Scholastic Gold Key or something like that. Then you put it in. Talent, what's your greatest talent or skill? That's, again, something that would need to be quantified. You can't be like, I'm a real honest person. It's got to be like, my greatest talent is swimming because of my performance in the 100-meter butterfly at such and such meet. Educational commitment. How have you taken advantage of an educational opportunity or worked to overcome an educational barrier? Not many of our students have worked to overcome educational barriers. You know, with the exception of it being just like stressful and miserable, obviously. What we will have, for the most part, taken advantage of significant educational opportunities in terms of educational prep programs, presuming we've done our job right. In the case of computer science and engineering students, this needs to be one of the prompts that you reply to. And I'll highlight that. We'll highlight that. You got to do the fourth one. You got to talk about what you've done outside of the classroom to prepare yourself for a future in CS and engineering. The next one, challenge, the most significant challenge you face. Thankfully, not a lot of our students have real like challenges, like life challenges. So it usually doesn't play into it. But if there is a challenge, you know, that plays as well with UC's leadership, if not better. So we go into that. God forbid. So next one, academic commitment. What about X field of interest inspires you? This, along with number 4, is another one that engineering and CS students need to do, where you lay it on thick in terms of the accomplishments and how you've addressed your interest in engineering. UCs all have direct entry programs in engineering. If you want to be successful getting in there, you got to indicate that you're ready to hit the ground running as soon as you get in. Community service, what have you done to make your school a better place? We use that if it's like, if there's significant leadership in it or something else, then maybe, but otherwise it doesn't move the needle that much. The catch-all, number 8, we never use. I mean, if something doesn't fit in these other categories, then it's not going to be worthwhile for UC. A couple of years ago, we had a student that she was just committed to doing the number 8. It's like, okay, it's your funeral, but, you know, we indicated what if it doesn't fit in one of the other ones, you shouldn't even be going in the UC app. Okay. So for UC in general, keep in mind, again, what they look for. Academic performance, that dominates everything with UC. UC is in the business of admitting scholars. Achievements in special projects. We had, and some of our illustrations this past year, wobbly student from an East Bay high school, good number of B's, but a passion for physics. And by passion, I don't say that lightly, like the most cliche word out there. Really into physics, big time special projects with physics, developed a physics club at his school after going to a new school. As soon as he's there, starts off a physics club, has cool physics outreach things that he's done for kids in cities. So that really, and Berkeley admin. So again, special achievements, especially academic stuff, can work a lot with UC. Leadership, as I said, with UC is huge. Leadership means that you're actually leading people. And that leadership position doesn't necessarily mean you're a leader, and leadership summer program doesn't mean anything. Leading people by following around a summer program advisor. UC also wants the participation of the educational prep programs as well as other experience outside of the classroom, presuming you're a STEM kid. And finally, for the conclusion, and I'll go into this basic structure in a bit. UC wants big, bold dreams and aspirations. Showing how students hope to take advantage of a UC education of the future and what they will do after, conforming to the philosophy of UC, where they will be the rising tide that lifts all boats. With UC, we start by gathering information a little bit from the pre-writing. When I go through the pre-writing, I mark off stuff that will be useful for the UC essays. But really, more than anything else with this activity sheet that Jenna sent out that has a deadline, the first deadline of April 21. Try and get it done by then. And if parents need to get involved, get involved. You'll also have much better recollections for student activities than the students will. This activities doc is, as you can see, a very boring collection of what you've done outside of the classroom since summer after 8th grade. We look at this content as well as the content from Common App, and we back that content into the best fitting UC essays. So the content is what takes priority with UC. If you got good stuff, we use it. So please get us the activities sheets as soon as you have the opportunity to do so. It doesn't have to be fully developed, but we need like basic description, one line about the program, what you did, and that'll allow us to start building outlines for the Common App essays. But we start with the activities allow us to start building the UC essays, pardon me. We start with the activities in order to build UC because, again, that's what UC prioritizes, the content. From a UC admissions officer, no need to set the stage or use this as a creative writing exercise, just get to the point. It wasn't long ago, things have changed a little bit, but it wasn't long ago, like 4 years ago, that there were some UC admissions officers that were saying, just give us bullet points. It's not, that's not promoted anymore, but you get the idea. Content is king with UC. How do you ruin UC? By not quantifying achievements. You need to give context. You need to quantify things in leadership. And we'll all, we school you in all of this and all of that. We go through all of this with making sure that, you said you led, you said you were president of the club. How many students were in the club? 53, that's a big club. We have to lay that out. Only 5, okay, we leave it a little bit ambiguous then. But in the case of things where it's going to wind up looking at working well in your future, we want to make sure that we get things out there. Leadership, talents, awards, service hours, all of that is what we need. We need to provide examples as well. Not providing examples is something that's the death knell of UC. You need to have the details in there. You need the examples in there. Oddly enough, you need the future goals in there. And you need to have a plan in there to contribute to UC and society after UC. So the setup really is every UC essay needs a little bit of motivation and backstory. I wound up learning computer science at the feet of my parents, who were both engineers at Cisco. Very unique story, I realize. Moving into the content, details, connection from one experience to the next, cause and effect type stuff, show growth, show some maturation, some learning. It shouldn't just be bullet points, in my opinion. You should have some progression in there. And then the last part of the app, big, bold dreams and aspirations at UC and beyond. And as I said, I think it's helpful to fit UC's general vibe of wanting to be the rising tide that lifts all boats. If you're going to talk about, dreams and aspirations in computer science, it's not like I want to develop such and such a program, sell it for $1 billion and retire to the Cayman Islands. It should be something more along the lines of, I want to develop an app that's going to allow people to more closely monitor their health as my success in health-related computer science applications as already indicated. So a little bit of backstory, a little bit of motivation, and especially if it's relevant, especially if it's something kind of poignant and personal, but not too much. Most of the meat, content, details, fitting those 13 points of comprehensive review, these things. And then big, bold dreams and aspirations. Again, reflecting, in my opinion, the principles of UC. So yeah, UC, again, one right way to do it, everything else is wrong. And when we get to the UC essays, I mean, you see that. And let me just see this question. Somebody else's question. Excellent question. A question about the activities sheet. Anonymous attendee, good question. Should we include future activities that will happen at the end of the year? Yes, please do that. Please include said activities. That's going to be something that we will need. And I believe that Jenna put that in there. Put stuff in there that you're planning on doing. Or put a note in there that potentially a position hasn't been fleshed out. If you're currently vice president of a club elections are maybe in the fall, you don't know if you're going to be president, put that in there. The more detail we have, even in terms of like planned stuff, the better it is. Because we're building the essays so soon. The only thing that shouldn't be in there, that can't be in there, that might move the needle would be a reply from a summer program like SIP, or maybe one of the Stanford programs that doesn't get back to you until like May, or a Poly that doesn't even open up until like April or May. Then, you know, at this point, you don't even know if those are like possibilities, especially with SIP, that's super selective. So, you know, we'll make sure that we go back and forth and update those. We also have a final deadline of that activities sheet in like September. So, you know, we're going to have another wave of updates and edits that'll get everything, you know, tight and good, and we'll make sure that everything will be in there. And in the meantime, we'll be in touch enough where we'll make sure and go back and forth enough to make sure that it'll make its way into the UC application. Excellent question. But just to give a little bit of information, and go into a little bit of the UC essays. Here they are. Oh, good. This first one, that's right. The first one was from the student that wound up doing. Yeah. So first one, significant educational opportunity or overcome an educational barrier. Setup, motivation, content, development, content, development, content, development, conclusion. Push the limits of technology and aspire to one day help us further our knowledge of the cosmos by solving complex astrophysics problems and making aeronautical advancements. It could be a little bit stronger. Next one, art, backstory, setup, background, motivation, content, development, details, giving the reader context, deliverables, more content, more deliverables. Good enough. A 2-3 sentence conclusion, you know, it would be nice to make it a little bit more like I do want to save the world by way of art, but, you know, solid enough. But yeah, UC, as you see, very straightforward, very, very, very deliberate, not anything that demands creativity, at least as far as from the writing. Now, our process, which I've implied quite a bit and which I've gone over with just about everybody, where I've gone through the step-by-step, the month-by-month, what we do. Again, as I've spoken to everybody about, and as you know, summer program stuff, and many of you have been with us for several years where we've done summer program stuff. The summer program stuff is very, we're using the summer program essays to kind of get more content out of the students. So we give jumping off points, but there's not that much that's totally framed out. That's different with all of these essays. Everything is, there's a lot more at stake with these, and everything is framed out and detailed in quite an extensive manner. So one thing, as you've seen, as I've discussed, is we have pre-writing. Most students have gotten that done. If you haven't gotten that done, please get it done. Once it's done, then we'll start to meet about the essays. I come in with ideas for the essay. The essay consultant comes in with ideas for the essay. Riley and I chat about ideas for the essay before going into it. So complete the pre-writing. We meet with the essay consultants. We start with the common application. We would like the activity sheet, as I said, to be completed by maybe next week, at least the first wave. Not everything fully detailed, but the first wave, all activities with light descriptions and generally correct years and hours in the activity sheet. As long as we've got that, then we can start building the UC essays. So again, crazy as it sounds, by the end of April, our goal, and we'll have this, in the works for several students, is to have the common application essay underway and the UC essays underway. One obvious question, that you might be thinking right now: how are you going to get the UC essays underway that are supposed to be content specific when the summer before senior year is when I've got 10 things that I'm doing, all of which are most significant? We know that, and we leave space in the essays in order to account for that. I know that you're not going to be able to talk about Cosmos for the educational opportunity essay if you haven't been to it yet. So, we just got to leave that blank. We address the majority of the questions. We address the questions that we can, and then we circle back to the ones that required summer for a little bit of fill-in and then get them done. With Common App, we've started these. UC, we're going to start those soon. Common App is like 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 6 drafts. UC is about 4 drafts. One piece of information that I give to everybody: work on the essays consistently from now until January 1st, 2024 at 11:59 p.m. This is, again, the heavy lifting that you'll go through. If you let it sit and try and get creativity on demand or procrastinate, everybody goes bananas. Everybody freaks out. It's a miserable experience. And that should be enough to avoid doing it. So we want to address stuff consistently. Everything else in your life will seem like it can take place over the writing. Don't let it. If you let it sit, it's just a log jam that makes everybody miserable. All right, I belabor the point. Good enough. Okay, so we do want to begin the early action, early decision schools, or even schools that you're just 100% on in June. And I'll get to that in a second. Doing this all out of order. I should reorganize this. But in any case, with the activity sheets, all activities, planned ones too, with light descriptions and generally correct years and hours by April 21. Nothing intense, nothing heavy. If you want to give detail, then wonderful. But we are using this in order to build the UC essays, so we need a little bit of content, and you can fill the details in the drafts. And again, mom and dad, you, as I'm sure you know, often have a better recollection of your son or daughter's stuff than they do. By September 1, we need it fully developed so we can have the, and I think they Jen put a later date on it, like September 21st. I'd like to get it done earlier, the better. Just because we edit all of that stuff and it's a pain. It takes a while, and we edit it in order to get it on the application. So the earlier we have it done, the earlier we have to get as much content in the activities doc as we can, the earlier I can get my editors on it to clean things up, get things down to the limit, put in a few more dynamic words and so forth. So as always, the earlier the better with all this stuff. The earlier the better. We wind up settling on some schools too. By about the middle of June, we want to settle on a couple of schools that you're definitely going to apply to. Not like schools that are early decision schools where if you get in, you have to go. But just like, you know what? I think that I really like Michigan a lot. I love cold weather and an overpriced out-of-state tuition. So I'm down to apply to Ann Arbor. If we know that, then at least we can get started on things in the middle of June, when you should be having Common App and UC kind of getting wrapped up. The earlier we can start on the supplements, the better. Everybody always wants to get things early and done early, and preach on the choir. Works much better for me too. So in every discussion we have, we go through the school list. We don't have to settle on a full school list until like early in the fall, but by middle of June, I'd like to know 2 schools that you're like 100% on so we can start drafting those over the summer. An issue to avoid for the fall: we can review essays submitted less than 48 hours before the deadline, but we'll only have enough time to fix sentence level issues. I misedited that. So fix sentence level issues. And we post the essays on the application for the student just to make sure that the formatting doesn't get all messed up. But within 48 hours, that's going to be on the student to post the essays. So, our little stick is that we got to get things in early. And if it's on us, if we would drop the ball on something, then obviously, that's not going to wind up applying, but you get the idea. Next thing up that we've got are our results from this year, which were great for students applying to private schools, great for students applying to UC that were not interested in computer science or STEM, terrible for students applying to UC that had an interest in computer science or data science. So yeah, just to kind of give you a little bit of a teaser, we did well this year, but for UC in particular, and we had a lot of Berkeley, but not a single Cal. For one kid, for the Princeton MIT kid got into Cal for CS, nobody else. Nobody at UCLA one student from Leland for CS at LA. But yeah, just LA and Berkeley just as I've said before, distastefully, it was like the last week of March for UC was like one of the battle scenes from Game of Thrones, where everybody just gets annihilated. Good results again in general for the art students, for the physics students, for the bio students, for 2 business students. But yeah, the CS and data science heavily impacted for UC. We'll go over that once I'm having a meeting, and all the consultants are going to be in in town next week, and we're going to do our little gathering of data and a little digest of the data. And then in early May, I'll come out with the results, and we'll go over some patterns. I've got some ideas of the reasons that things went the way they did with certain schools. I'd kind of like to explore those. So probably early mid-May, right around AP season, when final season, when there's no stress at all. But as usual, it'll be recorded. And if you have trouble falling asleep, you can always watch the recording. So as always, thank you for your time. Let me go into questions, though. Let's see this. Okay, activity sheet. What is the latest pre-writing what is the latest the pre-writing can begin? Is there an overall calendar of these steps? Yes, the calendar of the steps is in the data form. The pre-writing should have been done, as I said, by March 20th, according to Riley's timeline that he sent out to students and has reminded them several times. So if you've got any questions on that in particular, or you might be an underclassman, you're not aware of this, then please let me know, and I'll clarify it. But yeah, the timeline of events is, as I've gone through with most people on their latest meetings, on the data form. It's also going to be on the, I don't think it's up yet, on the database, where we lay out exactly the steps that every student has gone through, where they stand with each essay. So that's a nice visual, but pre-writing should have been begun. We wanted to get it done by March 20th. And, the sooner it can get done, the better. Okay, on to the next question. Do private out-of-state schools have common questions, or are the essays always completely different? The common application prompt is the same among all of those. No matter what, if you've got, let me look at that again. I may have. The private out-of-state schools have common questions, or the essays always completely different. For the supplements of what you're talking about, they're going to share the Common App essay in common. For the supplements, there's a lot of overlap, depending on the schools. Like if you do Purdue, you can do UMass Amherst within 3.5 minutes. If you do the Common App, you can modify it for Rutgers within 3.5 minutes. Trying to think of another good one. If you do Wisconsin or Michigan, that can spill over to a lot of other schools, because it's basically a similarly length 550, 650 YS essay that are two big flagship publics in the Midwest. It's not hard to poach. For fancy schools, there's not as much overlap. I mean, like the roommate question is Stanford's question. There used to be a UPenn question. You've just finished your 360-page autobiography. Give us page 212. That was a UPenn question. I'm trying to think of anything else that's super representative. Brown, how would you take advantage of the open curriculum? Rice, the box, where you have to upload a PDF of something that you find appealing. So for the most part, the fancy schools will have their own unique prompts, which are used for practical purposes, as well as to market themselves as playful, unique places. But in many cases, especially with the publics, especially with big flagship publics, they will share a lot of prompts in common. Okay. Will a good SAT score help with a not great GPA? I love this. Example of good SAT score, 1550. Yes, example of not great GPA, 4.5, only in the Silicon Valley. That GPA sounds fabulous, but back to the question, which is, will a great SAT score offset a low GPA? It kind of depends, and it depends on the student. It's happened before, but it also depends on the school. Let me give you a great example. Student from Mission 3 years ago, that was maybe 2 years ago, admitted to a very, very highly selective program at USC, where they really demanded a lot of academic involvement as well as a portfolio involvement. She had great SAT scores, like 1550 plus, and real wobbly grades. Admission, 1B gets you out of the top 20% of the class, and she had like 5 Bs. So she was, just comparatively not where a lot of the other students were. I would say that the test score, along with the portfolio and involvement, wound up surmounting, getting over, exonerating the lower GPA, because the school at least had confidence that the student, had the academic ability, intellectual ability, whatever you want to call it, as non-PC as that is, that she showcased from the SAT. She had the other accomplishments that she showcased from the portfolio, and that's often that happens often. Not often, but students, if they've got wobbly grades and good tests, the students for whom that profile is successful will usually have some other stuff going on. A real impressive list of projects, biophys, Chem Olympiad type, USICO type stuff. Real heavy rigor, like maybe they got a couple of B's, but they've taken every single AP class that's offered at the school and the whole district. So, I mean, it's usually not going to be like mano a mano, one-to-one. Maybe when you get to like outside of the top 90, top 100 with smaller privates, where it's kind of like we need the SAT scores are there. We know the kid's smart. They don't have the GPA, but the SAT score will certainly help the averages. Then it'll wind up working out. But at the top level schools, you need the transcript is always the centerpiece of the application. And if the grades are wobbly, you need something else in there. And it can even be another part of the transcript. It can be the rigor. It can be maybe like, maybe the kid has a bunch of B's, but there are 9s. The trend is really moving up. So got to be something else aside from just like weak grades, high test scores you're in. It's got to be, high test scores and high other stuff. Excellent question. All right, next one. Was there anyone in the program that has not made it into any universities? No. Could you imagine? My God. I mean, with all of this, we are on a 10 application package for most students. Most students will do another, 5, 10 on their own. With UC, you get 9. A better question, was everybody happy? No. With where they got in. No, but that doesn't always make it. It makes a difference, obviously. But I'll give you a good example. We had a student from I'm not going to say where, a very good public high school that was admitted to engineering at Illinois and was not admitted to engineering at a single UC through Riverside or computer science. That student was disappointed. I was disappointed. I'm disappointed for him, but he's got Illinois, which, is going to be better, at least as far as the ranking is concerned, than the lion's share of the UCs that he wound up getting into. So, and that one worked out well. There are some cases where it's like, student really, really wanted a top level UC, got a mid-level UC, and is definitely going to UC. And in that case, they're not happy either. But, it's not something where like people are not getting into nowhere. This is, though, a year that has, the lesson is that safety schools are the rank is getting further and further pushed out. No matter who you are, there's a reason to deny you. It's just a matter of, at what level you are. I mean, the kid that wound up getting into, Princeton and MIT, denied to Stanford, denied to Harvard, denied to Yale. Again, reason to deny everyone. Not everyone can be everything to every school and what the school needs are. So I'll go into like my soapbox with that when we go over the results. So did anybody get in or no? Was anybody not happy? Yeah. Were some people illegitimately not happy? Yeah, they should have been happy. Were some people legitimately not happy? Yeah, they've got a reason to complain. I mean, and hopefully not at me. But I think at the situation, the USC, for instance, was predicting 22 to 25% admit rate for early action. They admitted at 6.9%. NYU got 120,000 applications. Arts and Sciences is admitting at 4.9%. UC got 200,000 applications plus. So it goes. But we do what we can in order to cast the net wide, in order to have appropriate safeties. Yes, I would be happy to share the recording of this Zoom call. Do supplemental essays change every year? They say the same. Excellent question. For schools that are a little bit lazy, they say the same. For schools like Chicago, they kind of make their mark based on the supplemental essays and their uncommon application, they change every year. In the case of Stanford, and in some cases they change strategically, like with Stanford. And I mentioned this in the outline, whenever a student applies to Stanford. Up until 2010, Stanford had a prompt that was why Stanford? And then in 2009, 2010, as you may recollect, maybe not, Gunn and Pally had a lot of issues with student self-harm, to put it mildly. So Stanford took that essay out of the app and replaced it with one that's been there since. What matters to you and why. So schools will, sometimes change, sometimes not change essay prompts. Sometimes they will change essay prompts. Sometimes it's just a matter of freshening things up. Sometimes it's for a strategic angle why they're doing it. And, we obviously pay attention to that and let you know strategically what you should be paying attention to when replying to that question. Okay. Around what time do we start doing supplemental essays? June 15th, if we can. middle of June when we start nailing down as schools that you're definitely going to apply to. And that's not, I mean, there's going to be, we're not going to, like I said, finalize the school list for some time. But, at this point, you probably have an idea of what school you're going to definitely apply to, or I mean, a school that you're definitely going to apply to. And we talk about this and sort it out. But even if it's like, and I like starting with the hard ones too. If you're like, oh, I really want to apply to Stanford, but I'm not going to get, well, if you know you definitely want to apply there, then we'll start off with it because it's generally one of the harder, supplements. And right now, I mean, just to, not to talk everybody's ear off that I'm always prone to do. The supplements really get released with the release of the new Common App, and the new Common App rolls over in the first week of August. So we're only like 100% on the new supplemental prompts after the first week of August. But in late May, we're contacting all of the schools that would be the usual suspects for those that are changing their prompts and getting out in front of them. And if they do change their prompts, presuming we know them and they tell us them, then we'll adjust. If not, then we'll move on to a different school. But we're making sure that as early as we're starting, we need to make sure that the schools are not going to change their prompts. And if they do, we need to know what they are because we're going to start outlining schools by that time. Wait, sorry, 3.5 GPA. Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you very much. Okay. When is the deadline for the UC essays usually? I'm so sorry. That's stupid. I should have said that. The UC application is due 11/30/2023, November 30th, 2023. With the essays, we're going to have them done by hopefully like June. But we want to get them done because we know what the prompts are going to be. Everybody's applying for UC. It's an easy set of essays to get out of the way. And if you wait too long for UC, everyone freaks out. If we were to put things in order chronologically of like when the apps were due to start UC, I guarantee you we'd have half the students that were doing it during Thanksgiving break, which we can't have because everything slows down during that time. So the deadline for the UC application is 11/30/2023. The earliest we can get the application in is 10/1/2023. We will have the essays done by the latest, like July 1, unless the kid really drags their feet on one thing or another. And Shirley meets with students in August and September for UC applications. So we should have the application almost fully populated by beginning of October. But we usually submit at the beginning of November. That's just, easy. You don't want to wait. You don't want to really do it. This sounds so silly, but you don't want to submit the thing in the first week that it opens because it gets a little bit glitchy. So usually with UC, you wait for a week to see if there's anything weird that happens, and then you can start submitting stuff. Is it more helpful to have diversity in your activities or a narrow focus on activities? Both. Just like everything else, you need everything. Plus a 1650 on the SAT. My mantra with activities is you want to be well-rounded with pointy parts, meaning that you got some good volunteering, hopefully some leadership, maybe some arts, maybe some sports, maybe some music type stuff. Generally involved, a civically minded person that's exposed to a lot of different things, but you have one or two things that you're really focused on and that you can go into detail on in the application, one or two hooks. One of them needs to be academic because everybody is going to want scholars, maybe with the exception of like a Southeast Conference school that wants wide receivers. But aside from that, most people want scholars. So one of the little hooks that you have, one of the little pointy parts that you had, it needs to be narrow and deep in the field of study that you're going into. The other hook, the other pointy part that you developed outside of being well-rounded, it can really be anything. Hobby, Legos, and maybe not shopping, but like, you get the idea. It could be a lot of different things. Usually good to develop to show a little bit of diversity and to use for an activities essay. So well-rounded with pointy parts, a couple of different things that'll point out with the activities. Will a grade letter of recommendation from a teacher help with lower grades, or will grades be the first thing universities look and filter with before letter recommendation letters? Yeah, I'd say the latter. That a grade LOR is going to wind up making a difference, and a grade LOR that allows maybe the student has a reason for weak grades that they're putting in context. And you also have to keep in mind what your own understanding of weak grades might be. If you've got a couple of Bs, those aren't necessarily weak grades. Those are grades that normal mortal people have, in spite of like the grade distribution at schools like Lynbrook and Monte Vista and Mission and Irvington. If the kid's got a 2.9 and they're applying to Stanford, a letter of recommendation better be coming from somebody with the last name of Stanford in order to get in. But if a kid's like, struggling with a couple of B's, then I'd say an LOR is going to wind up helping. I mean, let's say this. Let's say a kid is struggling with Rusu's calculus class at Mission San Jose and say they're getting a B. People probably know Rusu in admissions offices. I know her with the letter that comes from her that might say, such and such is given it the old college try. And if not for me being a little bit nutty with the grades, would have an A. Then that would probably move the needle a little bit. And to be frank, I don't think that people in admissions offices would know Rusu, but I don't think that it would be the worst thing in the world. Again, though, if you're coming from 2.9 land, then no, then the transcript is the centerpiece of everything. If you got a 2.9, then we've got, and I'm not saying this glibly, we have at least 118 wonderful community colleges in our system, all for the in-state price of $3.93. Okay, you see different admission results between students from private versus public high schools. Yes, with I'll be able to get more detail on that too as we go into the results presentation. It's not like we've got a massive a massive sample size. But the schools that were the fancy schools, it's especially when students are shotgunning and you have people on Reddit that are talking about applying to 128 colleges. A lot of the times I think that, and I've mentioned this to so many of you, there's a great quote from an article from, and it's the same thing I've said to a bunch of you, great quote from an article from 2011 from an interview with an Amherst director of admission that said, yes, indeed, one year it's great to be a piccolo player, the next year it's great to play the piano. The one year it's great to be a track athlete, the next year it's great to be a football player. The candidate doesn't know. And that's the way that things go with college admissions at a real high level this year, is that there's certain ways there's certain demographics and certain needs that colleges will have. And when you're getting flooded with tens and hundreds of thousands of applications, sometimes it's easier to go to the demographic needs or even just kind of like the old usual suspects to make things a little bit easier. So Parker is, but let's just say for argument's sake, has presumably put together a pretty good product over the last 20 years of being a high school. Parker kids are going to get a little bit of an edge. We don't have tons of private school kids. I mean, the public schools for the most part around here, between Pally, Gunn, the San Jose and Cupertino schools, they're good. So, got some Harker, got some University, got some Menlo, Crystal here and there, Casti here and there, Valley Christian, Bellarmine, one or two every once in a while. The private schools did a little bit, the real fancy private schools did a little better. And some schools have traditionally put school students into other certain schools. So I'll go over this in the results presentation in May and give some data rather than just kind of, mumbling and staring off into the distance like I'm doing now, trying to think of something intelligent to say. Okay, next one. Do safety schools ever reject students because they believe that they are overqualified? Yeah, I would say so. That's called yield protection, which a lot of people know about. But that's probably this past year, a lot of people were attributing getting rejected or waitlisted to yield protection. It's like, no, you're applying to computer science at Santa Clara. And I'm sorry that Santa Clara, you've always seen it as a safety. But, Santa Clara is not admitting at a super high rate, especially CS and engineering, and students applying from their own backyard, they get a ton of them. So if you're applying to Santa Clara, for instance, and you're going to a good high school and you're coming in with a 1,500 on the SAT and a 3.8 unweighted to Santa Clara, and you're waitlisted or denied, are you being yield protected? Maybe, but maybe not. Yield protection it means a little bit less these days because it is so hard to tell, who's going to attend, who's going to attend if they get in. You can't just assume that, like with the Santa Clara thing. I mean, what I don't, and I'm just taking this from more of a practical standpoint rather than like something that's actually going on right now. But say you got a kid with like a 3.8 out of 1,500 that's being waitlisted at Santa Clara, not because they're being yield protected, but because it's that competitive right now to get into computer science, especially coming from our area. that's not yield protection. And if that's not yield protection, then what school that any kid applies to, it could yield protect? It's just like the safeties are getting so far outside of like the top 50 and the top 60 for everyone that if you're a kid that's got like, I guess if you've got like, you've done RSI and you're applying to the University of San Francisco, then maybe they think that you're not going to attend and they yield protect you that way. But I would say the results this year were people that called things yield protection were not as aware of the deluge of applications that wound up coming in. So yes, yield protection exists. Yes, it happens. It's happening less and less than before, though, because safety schools are not what they used to be. There's the days of like Boston University, Illinois being a safety. Those are that ship has sailed. So yeah, there are just so few schools these days that could be considered safeties that I don't know if a school could, yield protect a kid unless they just know the kid's not going to come, unless the data has indicated that kids that are applying RD from a particular high school yielded like, 5% maybe. But yeah, otherwise the notion of safety has gotten so out of whack over the past couple of cycles that, yeah, hard for them to be a safety, hard for a university to even know when it's a kid's safety. Our early decision schools typically dream schools or a very high reach school that may not be achieved? Is there a process for determining ED schools? Yeah, and that's really that's the most that I have to offer for all of this process. Like, to be frank, the essays I've been doing them forever, but Riley's good, and he knows just as much as I do at this point. And the essay consultants that we've got are great, and they're better editors than I am, all of them. With the schools though, and with the school decision, it's I can never get out of that. And I think just because I've been in it for so long that that's something that no matter what, that's kind of the expertise that I can give with all of this. So we do a real deep analysis on going over what schools you're going to be applying to, and in particular what school you're going to be applying to early decision. And it differs from person to person. With some people, if they're like, I don't want to apply early decision anywhere, unless it's my definite dream school, then that's understandable. Then people will people go all in on, HYPS, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford. None of them do early decision, but you get the idea. But they'll go, dream school. Other students will be a little bit more practical, and then they'll be like, look, if not for the dream school, I'm either going to go to UC, tough insurance policy these days, or Cal State. Then okay, go for the dream school. Other students might be more along the lines of, I'm rank hunting and I want the best odds at a top 20 school that I could possibly get. Washington University and St. Louis has given me those best odds. I hate St. Louis and I hate ribs, and I don't like anything about the Midwest, but I'm going to do it anyways. And in that case, it tends to be a little bit more accessible for some students. These days, it's hard to say that a top 20 school will be accessible for early decision, but you kind of get the picture. My rule of thumb for determining schools is, as long as and this has been historically my rule of thumb. Students can go bananas on dream schools and everything like that, as long as they're comfortable with their safeties. As long as they feel like I'd happily go to my safety, then you can go all in on, all 8 Ivies, MIT and Caltech. The problem with that these days, though, is that you're not going to probably be comfortable with your safety as would exist, because safeties, as I said, are getting pushed further and further back. So you're going to be happy with a safety as Baylor. You got to go to Waco, Texas. And that's going to be one of the things this year that's going to be different than years past. This past year, and I'll go over it when we go into the results review. It was just really a sea change where, just the number of applications, I think with confidence after the pandemic, with test optional stuff, it's probably not going to get any better. It seems like it's the new normal, where, and it's going to depend on the person, how they want to leverage early decision. Because in the past, people have said, I'll do an early decision at a dream school, but, I really want to go to UC. And if I'm going to use UC as all my safety net. Well, if you're a computer science student or an engineering student, you can't do that anymore. You need something else as a safety. So that's getting pushed out of the way. And the other thing is too, cost of attendance are going up, and I'm very attuned to this, but, having 3 children under 6. The USC, they came out with their cost of attendance a couple of weeks ago. I only realized it because it was on a Reddit post that are applying to college. It's $91,000 a year plus. This is something where USC doesn't offer early decision, but NYU does. Everybody else that offers early decision is going to be $70,000, $80,000 a year plus. You get early decision somewhere, you can't negotiate scholarship offers. You can't negotiate financial aid offers. That might be something to consider too. I mean, being on the hook for $320,000 over the course of 4 years, even if you come from family money, it doesn't matter how many, illions you got, billions or millions, it's still going to probably be something like, ugh. So, ED, this allows you from doing that. So this year, a lot of things are going to be different than normal, or this coming year, I think that are going to be different than normal. What do you do? Do you apply ED to like Northeastern? Slam dunk probably, but you go there again, you're on the hook for 70, 80 grand a year for not even a top 50 school, number 51. Okay, so enough hemming and hawing. Rather limit now. Let me see. We've got another one in here. Do AP scores affect college application much? Excellent question and an easy one to respond to. No, not really. AP classes do. Grades in AP classes do. The number of AP classes do. UCs, Cal States will all have a certain number of AP and honors classes that accepted students will have on average. They quantify this stuff. But the test scores, it'll get you college credit. For fancy schools, it will put the rigor of the grade that you got in context, meaning that if you got a B in a class and you got a 5 on the exam, it's great. If you got an A in the class and a 3 on the exam, class doesn't look quite so rigorous. So in conjunction, in tandem with the class grade, the AP test scores will matter. Will they matter that much outside of it? Not that much. It's better to have good scores than bad scores. And if you've got like literally nothing to do, if you're sitting on the surface of Mars with nothing to do aside from study for AP tests independently, then go for it. But there's, you can always probably get more return on investment than doing self-study for AP test scores with doing something else. So, do they matter to a certain extent? They matter that much for admissions? Not really. Do they matter by themselves? Not too much at all. Is it better to have good ones than bad ones? Yeah. Is it better to have more than fewer? Yeah. But you're not going to get the best return on investment by starting them off from scratch now, just for the record, and then doing them. Excellent questions. So that's about the extent of this presentation. Thank you very much for hanging with me on a Sunday. I'm not gonna, everybody's so nice everybody's so polite. You'd probably hang around if I was just gonna, run my head for another 15 minutes talking gibberish, but I'm not gonna waste anybody's time like that. Drop me a line, email me if you'd like a copy of the presentation. I'll ask Riley to shoot it out over the next couple of days once this thing gets digested and put into a presidential or presentable slideshow. Yeah, and we'll go from there. But stay tuned for what I'm going to do for the results. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with that too. Okay, one more question. Can SAT, ACT be submitted to UC and will it help the application? Up until last year, I don't think you can submit it anymore. Maybe you can, no, maybe you can for like placement, but it doesn't impact the application. No, legislatively, it's not one of the 13 factors, which you saw before 2 years ago, the UC had 14 factors. Since they got rid of the SAT, no, just 13 factors. It can help with placement in some ways. However, there are other people that say, and I'm sure that this is just an unverified rumor, but I heard it from a reputable source that there's some AOs that say they don't want to see students' test scores at all, and they're holding it against them if they send them in or report them somewhere in the application. But in any case, it's something that it's not going to help the application for UC. No, it's not going to help admissions. Great question. Can it be submitted? I'm trying to remember the application. I think it could be self-reported last year, but I could be wrong. Yeah. And maybe they might change it for this year as well. Great question. Let me see, is there anything else? Oh, I'm so sorry. There's a couple more. For rigor, just getting a 4 in an exam after taking a non-AP class look okay? I'd say so. Yeah, I think that, what's going to be more important is the non-AP class. The test itself, though, is going to be good. It's going to be helpful. Like I said, it's better to have it than not to have it. Would it be helpful? Is it going to be better than nothing? Yeah. Is it going to be something that'll move the needle a ton? No. But, doing it, good. I'd say better than not doing it, but not a massive impact on admissions as a whole. is it a good idea to retake a 1550 SAT to super score? You can retake it if you wanted to. You've got at the 1550 level, you're pretty much good. And there's not going to be many places where a higher score than that will move the needle. But there's no harm because you can always hide the scores. College Board will always gladly take your registration fee for the SAT and allow you to pretend like you never took the score. The more they allow that, the more times you'll take the test and more David Coleman can get his $1.7 million annual salary. So if you want to retake it to get a higher score, you could. You don't need to, though. If you're at a 1550, that really does meet, the threshold of just like everybody, even the doom and gloomers on any chat room about test thresholds. So yeah, 1550, you're good. If you wanted to super score it, no, or if you wanted to take it again in order to get it bumped up, you could, but you wouldn't need to. There's probably better things that you could do with your time, but there'd be no drawback and no negative impact. And if you scored like a 990, you just hide it. Score anything, you just hide it. Okay. And with that, I'm going to close up shop. Let me know questions via email, and I'll shoot you recordings if you want them. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me. Hope you all have a great day. Bye.